The cemetery was always quiet at night, the kind of silence that pressed against your eardrums until you swore you could hear your own blood moving. I had walked these paths countless times before, checking for vandals, teens sneaking in, or the occasional drunk who thought a graveyard was a good shortcut home. It never bothered me until that night. It began with the light. A soft, pale blue shimmer hovered just above the oldest headstones, faint but impossible to ignore. At first, I thought it was a trick of the moon, or maybe someone with a flashlight cutting across the grounds. But as I drew closer, the glow slipped away, vanishing like smoke in a breeze. My gut told me to walk faster, yet I found myself chasing it deeper into the rows of leaning stones. That's when I saw the soil, a fresh mound, clawed open like something had dragged itself out instead of being buried. The grass was torn, roots dangling, and scattered frayed fabric, faded almost to the point of being unrecognizable. A sour, rotten smell rose up, sharp and wrong enough to make me steady myself. I bent down, sweeping my flashlight across the hole. The beam caught long, ragged grooves etched deep into the earth walls, as if nails, or something sharper, had clawed their way through. My breath fogged in front of me, though the air had been warm all day. That's when I heard it. A single step, just behind me. Not heavy, not loud, just the crisp crush of dry grass bending under weight. I spun around, light cutting through the dark, but the path was empty. My heart was pounding, but I told myself it had to be a deer or raccoon. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had left that grave hadn't gone far. As I turned back, I noticed something that made the hair on my arms rise. Footprints, fresh, damp, and pressed into the dirt, and they weren't mine. The prints trailed along the graves, oddly placed and too deliberate to be an animal's, as though whoever, or whatever made them, was moving carefully, deliberately. My beam followed them until they stopped just beside my own boots. For a second, the world froze. The stillness was total, smothering even the chirp of crickets. I held my breath, afraid that the sound of my lungs might give me away. Then, impossibly, a fresh print appeared beside mine, as if something had just stepped down. The soil depressed, the grass flattened, and yet there was nothing there. I staggered back, flashlight jerking wildly across the stones. The glow returned then, that strange blue shimmer, drifting between the rows. Only this time, it didn't flee when I approached. It lingered, waiting, almost beckoning me. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs moved forward on their own. The light led me to another grave, this one older, the stone half buried and the name carved into it worn to nothing. The earth here wasn't just disturbed, it looked shredded, as though something had clawed upward with violent desperation. My stomach twisted when I noticed the same brittle fabric scraps clinging to the roots. Behind me the steps came again, steady and patient, pacing me. I whirled, shining the light directly where the sound was coming from. Nothing, yet the grass swayed, parting as though brushed aside by a hand I couldn't see. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. "Hello?" My voice cracked, pitiful against the silence. No answer, just a soft, rasping sound, like breath caught in a dry throat, inches from my ear. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. My light picked up movement by the disturbed grave. A shape moved there, off in proportion, awkward and unfamiliar, head tilted too far to one side. Then, with deliberate slowness, it stepped forward, dragging itself into the light. Its skin was pallid and tight, and its eyes held the same faint blue light. It didn't rush, only watched, expression unreadable and unsettling. That was the moment I knew. The cemetery wasn't holding the dead anymore. Something had come up from the graves, and whatever it wasn't done with the place yet. The case file landed on my desk just like any other. Missing teenager, likely a runaway, maybe hiding with friends. At least, that's what the initial report suggested. Ashley wasn't the first girl in the county to disappear without warning. But something about this one gnawed at me. Her mother swore Ashley never went anywhere without telling her. Her friends backed it up. No fights, no boyfriend drama, no secret plans. Just silence, like the ground swallowed her whole. I started where I always do, the digital trail. Her social media was spotless, but the chat logs told a different story. Buried between harmless conversations were messages from an account with no photo, no history, no connections. Just a username, Keeper23. Their exchanges started friendly enough. Music, books, late-night complaints about parents. Then came the shift. Vague promises of a place where kids didn't have to listen anymore. Where they could be, promised a place where they could become part of something bigger. Prepared. That word stuck with me. The last message Ashley sent was a location pin dropped just after midnight. It marked an abandoned industrial site outside of town, long condemned, the kind of place kids dared each other to explore but never really did. I drove out there alone, headlights cutting through the fog that clung to the broken fences and collapsed roof lines. The building loomed like a carcass, picked clean by time. Shattered windows, rust bleeding down its sides. Inside, the air was heavy with mildew and rot. My flashlight swept across graffiti-tagged walls and broken machinery until it caught something else, a staircase leading down. Not on any map, not part of the original structure. Someone had built it later, hidden behind rusted panels. I descended carefully, the beam cutting into thick darkness. At the bottom, the stench hit me. Damp earth mixed with something coppery, metallic. My stomach turned. Ahead, narrow tunnels branched in every direction, crudely reinforced with wood and scrap metal. The walls were covered in crude marks and scratches, random and unsettling. And then I heard it. A voice, faint and trembling. A girl's voice. I followed the sound, every step echoing too loud in that suffocating underground. It led me to a chamber barely larger than a closet. Inside, huddled on the floor, was Ashley. She looked pale, thinner than her photos, but alive. Her eyes widened at the sight of me, relief washing over her face. But before I could move, another sound filled the tunnel. Footsteps, more than one pair. They weren't rushing. They weren't panicked. They were steady, deliberate, as if whoever was coming already knew I was there. I pulled Ashley behind me, keeping the flashlight aimed down the tunnel. Shadows moved first, stretching long across the walls. Then figures stepped into the beam. 3 of them. All wore masks, simple cloth sacks with holes cut for the eyes. No robes, no costumes, nothing theatrical. Just plain clothing, like any strangers you might pass on the street. That almost made it worse. The tallest one spoke. His voice was calm, almost casual. "You shouldn't be here. This isn't for you." I tightened my grip on the flashlight. "The girl's coming with me." They didn't move at first. Then, in unison, they tilted their heads, like they were listening to something I couldn't hear. It sent a chill crawling up my spine. Finally, the tall one spoke again. "She was selected. We're training them. You don't understand. I wanted to demand answers. But the way Ashley clutched my arm told me everything I needed to know." I backed us toward the staircase, flashlight shaking slightly in my hand. That's when one of them stepped forward, slow and deliberate, pulling something from his pocket. Not a knife, not a gun, a key ring. The metallic jingle echoed through the tunnels, sharp and deliberate, just like chains being rattled. Ashley whimpered, burying her face against my arm. The figures didn't follow when we bolted. They just stood there, watching, the keys jingling until we were halfway up the stairs. By the time we burst out into the open air, I had my phone in my hand, calling it in. Backups swarmed the place within the hour. But when they searched the tunnels, everything had changed. The chambers were empty. No masks, no keys, no strange symbols. The wood beams looked untouched, as if no one had walked those tunnels in years. The only evidence was Ashley herself, shaken, exhausted, but alive. The official report would later say we interrupted some kind of fringe group, that they scattered before backup arrived, leaving little behind. A neat explanation for something far less neat. But I remember the way those masked figures tilted their heads, as though waiting for a signal I couldn't hear. I remember the sound of the keys, rattling even when no doors stood between us. And I remember the last words spoken before we escaped. This is only the beginning. I tell myself, we saved Ashley. That should be enough. But every time another teenager goes missing, I can't help but think about those tunnels, about what might still be happening beneath the surface of this town. The case may be closed on paper, but I know better. Somewhere out there, they're still preparing. I never thought working nights at a cemetery would feel this strange. When I first signed on as a security guard, the job seemed simple enough. Walk the grounds, check the padlocks, keep out vandals and bored teenagers. The resting don't cause trouble, I told myself. Easy money. But the first time I heard the keys, I knew I was wrong. It was just past 2 in the morning, and the fog had settled so thick I could barely see 10 feet in front of me. I'd just finished checking the lock at the north gate when it happened, the metallic jingle of keys, sharp and deliberate, coming from right behind me. I froze, my flashlight beam shaking as I whipped it around. Nothing, just rows of gravestones vanishing into fog. At first, I told myself it was my own keys bouncing at my side, but I knew the sound too well. These weren't random clinks. They had rhythm, like someone walking with a ring of keys swaying against their belt. I kept moving, faster now, heart pounding against my chest. 10 minutes later, the sound came again. This time it was closer, so close I could almost feel the weight of it. And then I heard something worse, the slow, metallic click of a padlock opening. I swung my light toward the nearest gate. It was shut tight, the padlock dangling exactly as I had left it. I grabbed it and yanked hard, but it wouldn't budge. Still locked, yet I knew what I'd heard. The rest of the night, I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Every step I took felt echoed by someone just out of sight, a shadow in the fog, keeping perfect pace. I called my supervisor, muttered something about strange noises. He told me to keep calm, finish the shift, and that we'd check the cameras in the morning. Cameras or not, I knew there were no eyes on the old sections of the grounds, just me and whatever was out there. 3 nights passed in silence. I began to think maybe I was overtired. Maybe my mind was playing tricks in the fog. Then Monday came. That night the keys returned, but not just behind me. They matched me step for step. Every footfall was followed by a jingle, as if someone invisible walked beside me carrying a ring of keys meant to open every gate in the cemetery. I stopped. The sound didn't stop with me. It carried on for 2 more steps, as if the thing hadn't expected me to freeze. Then, unmistakable, the sharp pop of a lock opening echoed from the gate I'd checked seconds before. I ran back, my flashlight beam cutting wild arcs through the fog. The gate was locked, cold and untouched beneath my hands. But while I gripped the iron, more locks began to click open in the distance. First one, then another, then 3 at once, surrounding me from all sides. I yanked out my phone and hit record. My breathing rasped in the mic, my boots crunched against the gravel, and there it was. Keys jingling, locks snapping. Proof I wasn't losing my mind. I sent the recording to my boss immediately. Then I bolted for the maintenance shed, grabbed the heaviest flashlight we owned, and forced myself back onto the paths. The sounds followed. Keys, locks, footsteps, always a half-second behind me. The worst part was the gravel. No one can walk silently on those pale stones, and the rhythm of the steps beside me was wrong. Longer strides, heavier footfalls. Not mine, not an echo. I spun in circles, flashlight blazing across headstones and fog. No one there, yet the gravel showed fresh marks, as if someone unseen had walked ahead of me through. That was the moment I called the police. Not emergency, just enough to get someone else here. Another human voice in the dark. While I stood waiting, the sound stopped. Dead silence, as though whatever haunted the cemetery knew I'd called for help. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. They humored me, swept the grounds, checked the locks. Every gate was sealed, not a scratch on them. But when we reached the children's section, one of the officers noticed something strange. The padlocks were rotated, still closed, still secure, but each one turned in a different direction than how I'd left them. He took photos, made notes, and asked if anyone else had keys. Only me, my supervisor, and the cemetery director. That was it. The next morning, I told the director everything. My recordings, the patrol, the officer's visit. She didn't look surprised. Instead, she pulled out a folder thick with old reports, all from guards before me. Same noises, same footsteps, same locks. Some guards walked off the job. Others couldn't handle the strain. Then she told me the one detail that chilled me more than anything. It only happens to guards who work alone. The moment 2 people patrol together, the cemetery falls silent. I agreed to take a partner from then on. And for months, it worked. Nothing stirred when 2 of us walked the paths together. But twice, when my partner called out sick, I was left to handle a night shift alone. Both times, within an hour, I heard them again. Keys jingling, locks snapping, footsteps pacing me in the dark. I never stayed long enough to find out what happens if you let it continue. I don't think I ever will. Because here, in this cemetery, one rule is never broken. Always take a partner on patrol.